Thank you, President Kepner. At this time, I would like to introduce our 2022 commencement keynote speaker, Anne Marie Anderson. Anne Marie Anderson is a 3-time Emmy Award-winning sports broadcaster. At 24 years old, she became the youngest person to produce Olympic coverage for ESPN. She went on to cover 6 Olympic Games, Super Bowls, heavyweight title fights, NBA and MLB playoffs, and so much more. We asked Anne Marie to serve as our keynote speaker because achieving our mission together, as all of you have done, requires resilience and creativity. Those are 2 qualities that Anne Marie embodies. So without further ado, please welcome our 2022 keynote speaker, Anne Marie Anderson.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen, Board of Trustees, members of the faculty, family, and friends, and most importantly, you, the class of 2022. I am thrilled and honored to be here to celebrate your accomplishments. I wasn't prepared for the emotion that I felt as you all walked down the aisle. There's so much potential here. There's so much to be excited about. And you have already accomplished so much. Achieving our mission together, that's the theme of today's commencement, and oh my, have you achieved and survived over the last few years. As you've heard, we've never had this kind of collective experience before. The pandemic, unprecedented inflation, instability in world affairs, these are cataclysmic challenges. But together, you have collectively risen to the occasion. And as acknowledged, there was fear and uncertainty in the early days of the pandemic with quarantine, isolation, and school online. Yet together, you managed to create a new community virtually, and then again collectively, when you return to the classrooms. I mean, how many new normals have we had by now? That phrase needs to be retired. There is no new normal, right? Nothing's normal, it's all new. So that's today's question. What are you going to do with new? People may ask you now that you have your degree, so what's the plan? And as I thought about what I wanted to share with you today, I considered what I did not know as I sat in your chair 33 years ago at my own college graduation. What do I wish that someone had told me then? Here it is. You don't have to have a plan. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I knew what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go back home and live with my parents. I did not want to work in an office. I didn't want a job that had anything to do with math. I found technology frustrating, foreign language confusing, science beyond my brain's bandwidth. I hated the idea of sales. I couldn't envision myself sitting at a desk all day, but I also didn't want to work outside. I couldn't be in medicine because I fainted at the sight of blood. I knew nothing about business and had no interest in accounting. Other than that, I was open to all possibilities. But there was one more catch. I was painfully shy. So I definitely could not have a job where I had to talk to people. Public speaking terrified me. My first time on live television was as an ESPN sideline reporter on a college football game in 78 million homes. That was not the plan. And that brings me to my first piece of advice. Do the thing that scares you the most. Go fail at something early. Nothing teaches resiliency more than failing. I was awful the first time I was on live television, and the second, I was awful, and awful the 3rd time and the 15th time, but each time I faced the fear, got a little bit more comfortable, and maybe 1% better. So when people ask you, what do you want to do with your life? Maybe flip the question to, what do you not want to do? Because some of us build backwards. And the more you weed your garden of potential distractions and things that don't bring you joy, the more space there is for your passions to bloom. Whether you are continuing your education or going straight into or back to the workforce, give thought about how you ideally want to spend your days and nights. Blue sky thinking, they call it. Not just what you want your job to be, but your life. For a moment, toss out all the I shoulds you have in your head and consider what you really enjoy. How can you make a life and spend a lifetime doing what you enjoy? Caitlin, your parents were right. It's exactly that. Do what you love, because you're going to be doing it. I get asked a lot how I got into sports broadcasting, and really it was just a combination of the two things I loved the most when I was a child. I enjoyed sports, and my 4 older brothers say I was destined to be a reporter because according to them, I was a world-class tattletale. And it's true. I did delight in greeting my parents with the news of which brother got a scratch on the car or broke a window or snuck in after missing curfew, and accuracy was really important to me. I knew the exact time they snuck in and through which window. Occasionally I might toss in like a reenactment to go with the news. So maybe a sports reporter was in the cards from the beginning and I just didn't know it. I interviewed with ESPN shortly after graduation. They had an opening for a 6-month temporary job. No medical benefits, working 6 nights a week with Mondays off for very little money. I jumped at it. I borrowed a car, drove 3 hours to ESPN headquarters in Connecticut, and interviewed. And ESPN usually hired people who had a deep knowledge of sports and stats and history. I didn't have that. I couldn't spit out current NCAA basketball RPI rankings or analyze the Mariners' bullpen at a moment's notice. And the man interviewing me said that I was not what ESPN was looking for and that I did not get the job. That was the first of what is to this point hundreds of no's I have received when I have pursued jobs throughout my career. Hundreds, but that was the first, and it stung. And this is piece of advice number 2. Realize that sometimes no means not yet. Maybe you come back for the same opportunity. Maybe the no means it's time to pivot your plan to something different. When I returned to New York after that interview, I sat down and wrote a letter to that man. And by the way, in those days, we actually wrote a letter and licked a stamp, as unsanitary as that now seems, and mailed it. I had no plan, but I needed a job, and I was not ready to accept no. I still have that letter, and I looked at it this week as I was preparing to speak with you. It said, in part, "Unfortunately, I don't think our interview highlighted my strengths. While you likely have plenty of production assistants with vast and steep sports knowledge, I already have television experience and could potentially add a different skill set." I didn't have a job, but I apparently had a lot of nerve at 21. I had worked in college as a camera operator for a local sports show and cut highlight packages, so I played to my strengths while acknowledging I had work to do in other areas, and I didn't accept the first no. And ESPN called me back, and I got the job. Why? Thank you. Thank you. Why? Why did I get it? Because I wasn't like everyone else. And that's the third piece of advice. Use your differences. If you worked 40 hours a week while getting your degree or certificate, use that. Maybe the fact that you are different is exactly why you would be able to add value to the team that you're applying to join. But it's on you to point it out. I was so shy. I still am at times, but when I was rejected, I told him why different could help round out his new temps. I gave him a reason to hire me. I now actively seek out positions in which I would be the outlier. Truth, I want to be different from those who usually occupy the role. That's how I ended up as a play-by-play announcer when there were very few women who at that time occupied that seat. There will be many who tell you that you are not like the others. You don't fit. That's a compliment. Accept it and use your differences to add value to any task you take on. After the 6 months were over, I got offered a full-time position working in SportsCenter. That's ESPN's news division. And I worked in Connecticut for 5 years, progressing from temporary production assistant to feature and field producer. But I did not enjoy the winters in Connecticut and craved more of a social life. And as I shared with you, my guiding principle is to do what you love. And as soon as I stopped enjoying my time at ESPN's headquarters, I sought to change what diminished my joy. And for me, that was living in cold weather. I approached my boss and asked if I could become Los Angeles bureau producer. It was a role similar to what I was already doing, but based in LA rather than in Connecticut, and my boss said, no. ESPN already had somebody in Los Angeles, he reasoned, and they didn't need another. And I pressed, and he said, I tell you what, give it 2 more years here. If in 2 years we aren't happy, then we can talk about LA, what we have really lost. I answered 2 years, and I gave my notice. My boss chastised me, saying I was impatient. And I said, yes, I am impatient, I agree. And then I got in the car and I drove cross country to California, where again, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I did know what I wasn't going to do. I wasn't going to shovel snow. And by the time I reached LA, ESPN had offered me a contract as a bureau producer for nearly double the money. Here's the lesson. Don't let anyone dictate your timeline. Your timeline is run by you and no one else. And the reason I share this story, it wasn't a bluff. I didn't know they were going to hire me back. I tell the story because I made the decision to go for the right reasons. I was unhappy in Connecticut, and no one's a great contributor when they're unhappy. So pay attention when you feel unfulfilled. Be flexible and adjust. Many of you are not 20-something graduating. You've come back to college later in your life. This is your timeline. Good for you. You've already done the hard thing and made a decision to further your education after life and kids and work has already grabbed a hold of you. I salute you. That is living on your timeline. And I'm sure that wasn't comfortable. Working and going to school, and for many of you, raising a family too. You've already practiced a skill that will propel you forward in life. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. If I'm offered a job and I'm uncomfortable doing it, it's an automatic yes for me. Embrace the feeling of uncertainty. Apply for the job when you only have 60% of the qualifications. Find someone doing what you want to do and ask them to mentor you, or if you can shadow them, or if they can help with an introduction, and if they won't, find someone who will. And graduates, I'm not saying this as a cute, get outside your comfort zone. I actually mean put yourself in a position to feel uncomfortable. The first time I went on air in those 78 million homes, I was nearly hysterical on the phone with my father right outside the stadium. And he said, Anne Marie, what's the worst that can happen? And I said, Dad, I could be so terrible on air that not only will I not get more on-camera work, but I'll lose my producing job, because none of the correspondents I work with will ever take my direction again after they see that I can't do their job. I was wildly and even physically uncomfortable while I did the thing that scared me the most. And remember, I was terrible the first time, but I did it again. So as you continue on after graduation, I hope you'll create the life you want. But I have to be honest, I'm not a big fan of hope. Hope can be a weak word. I know, hope's a virtue. And hope is nice. It makes you feel good and optimistic. But my friends, hope is not a plan. Sometimes people will say, well, plan A is to do this and this, and I hope it works out. But if not, plan B is, I don't believe in plan B. Plan B is easy. If you want easy, skip plan A altogether and just do plan B. You see, I never had a plan B. I just kept amending plan A. So as you celebrate your accomplishment today, and I congratulate you, I urge you, do the thing that scares you most. Fail early and often. Use your differences. Rack up the rejections and wear them as a badge of honor of all the times you pushed yourself and grew and took a risk. And do it all on your timeline. That in itself is a plan, and that is what I hope for you. Congratulations.